If every human on Earth vanished tonight all at once, gone without a trace, you probably imagine the animal kingdom would throw a party. Finally free, nature healing, the whole planet exhaling after a long, hard fever. And for a huge part of the wild world, that is exactly what would happen. But that clean, comforting story hides something much stranger and much darker. Because the disappearance of humanity would not simply set the animals free, it would split the entire animal kingdom in two, into the ones who would flourish like never before, and the ones who would begin to die within weeks. And the dividing line between those two groups is not at all where you think it is. There is an enormous category of animals, billions of them, that we almost never think of as depending on us, and they would start to collapse almost immediately. Because here's the thing we always forget. We did not just live alongside the animal world. Over thousands of years, we quietly rebuilt huge parts of it around ourselves, and pulling humanity out of the picture would not gently release nature. It would detonate it. And somewhere in all of that chaos, in the rewilding cities and the booming forests and the collapsing populations, there would be one kind of animal that would not run wild and would not reclaim anything. It would simply walk to a door and lie down and wait for someone who is never, ever coming back. Let's start with the ones who would feel it first, the ones closest to us, because their story is the hardest. Your pets. The hundreds of millions of dogs and cats who share human homes around the world. For an indoor cat, or a small dog, or any animal that has spent its entire life depending completely on a human for food, water, and an open door, the disappearance would be a quiet catastrophe. At first, there would just be confusion. The dog would wait by the door at the usual time. The cat would sit by its empty bowl. They would wait through the first day and the second, certain that the routine would resume, because it always has. And as the days passed and no one came, the lucky ones, the ones who could get outside, would be forced to do something most pets have never done in their lives: survive on their own. Some would manage it. Dogs are descended from wolves, and cats have never fully surrendered their wild instincts. So a portion of them, especially the larger, hardier, more independent animals, would slowly turn feral. They would form loose packs, learn to hunt, and a new generation would be born that never knew a human hand at all. But many would not make it. The tiny breeds we shaped for our laps, the animals trapped inside locked homes, the ones too old or too gentle or too dependent, would not survive the transition. We took the wolf and the wildcat and we softened them over thousands of years into companions. And in doing that, we made millions of them unable to live without us. Their freedom, when it finally came, would arrive far too suddenly, and for many of them, far too late. But pets are only the smallest part of the picture, because the largest population of animals that depends on humans is not in our homes. It is on our farms. Right now, there are tens of billions of farm animals alive on this planet, vastly more than there are humans, and almost every single one of them exists only because we made it. Billions of chickens, pigs, and cattle, packed into a global system that runs entirely on human hands. If we vanished, that system would stop instantly. Animals trapped in barns and pens, with no one to open the gates or bring the feed, would face the worst of it, and there is no gentle way to say it. Many would not survive being left behind locked doors, but the ones who could escape would walk out into a stranger story than you might expect, because we did not just raise these animals. We redesigned them. We bred chickens to grow so large so fast that many modern ones can barely move, let alone survive in the wild. We bred turkeys so heavy that some breeds can no longer even reproduce on their own without human help, which means that, left alone, they would simply be the last of their kind. Cattle would face predators they have not had to fear in generations. And yet, against all of that, life is stubborn. Some pigs, which return to a wild, tusked, bristly state with astonishing speed, would thrive and spread. Some hardy cattle and goats would scatter into the landscape and slowly rewild. Out of the billions of animals we created to depend on us, a tough and lucky few would claw their way back into being wild things again. But it would be a brutal sorting, and most of what we built would simply end. Now here is the part almost nobody thinks about, and it is where this story takes its first real turn. Look out your window for a second. Look at the animals you can actually see. The pigeons on the ledge, the sparrows in the bushes, the squirrels in the park, the rats you know are there even when you can't see them, the gulls following the garbage trucks. Here is the unsettling truth about almost all of them. They are not really wild in the way you imagine. They are with us. Over thousands of years, an entire category of animals evolved to live off of human civilization, off our food, our warmth, our waste, our buildings. Scientists even have a name for them. And these animals did not just tolerate us, they boomed because of us, multiplying into enormous populations that the natural world, on its own, could never have supported. The common pigeon is essentially a cliff-dwelling bird that decided our cities were better cliffs. Rats and mice followed our grain stores across the entire globe. So when people picture a world without humans, they imagine these creatures finally running free. But for a huge number of them, our disappearance would not be freedom. It would be famine. Cut off from the endless buffet of human food waste, their massive, artificially inflated populations would crash. The pigeons would starve in their thousands. The rat empires built on our garbage would collapse. The very animals we think of as the survivors, the pests, the ones who would surely outlast us, are in many cases the ones most dependent on us of all. And that is the realization that flips this entire question on its head. We tell ourselves a simple story, that there is the human world over here and the natural world over there, and that if we vanished, nature would just heal and return to how it was meant to be. But that line, the one between the human world and the wild one, barely exists anymore. We did not build our civilization next to nature. We built it through nature, around nature, into nature, until the two became tangled together so completely that they cannot cleanly come apart. Our farms, our cities, our food, our light, our heat, our garbage, all of it has become the foundation of life for billions of creatures. So removing humanity would not be like lifting a weight off the natural world. It would be more like pulling a single thread that runs through the entire tapestry. Whole ecosystems built on us would unravel and collapse. Other ecosystems, long suppressed by us, would explode back into life. The world that emerged would not be the old, untouched wilderness we like to imagine. It would be something new, something violent and chaotic and reshaped, a planet convulsing as it tries to figure out what it even is without the species that had quietly become its center. But once that convulsion settled, something genuinely breathtaking would begin. Because for the vast majority of the truly wild world, our disappearance would be the single greatest thing that ever happened to it. And we do not have to guess at this, because we have already seen it. Around the site of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, humans left in a hurry and never fully returned, abandoning an enormous zone of land. And in the decades since, even with the radiation, that zone has become one of the most remarkable wildlife refuges in the region. Wolves, lynx, wild horses, elk, bears, and boar moved into the empty towns and overgrown streets, thriving in the absence of the one thing more disruptive to them than radiation. Us. That is the proof. When we leave, the wild comes back, and it comes back fast. So picture it on a global scale, with no more hunting, no more fishing fleets, no more habitat destruction, no more roads. The recovery would be staggering. Fish would return to the oceans in numbers no living person has ever seen. The great forest would begin to spread back across the land. Animals pushed to the very brink of extinction by human pressure would, if they could just hold on long enough, find themselves with an entire planet suddenly handed back to them. Within a few centuries, the Earth would be wilder, greener, and more teeming with life than it has been in thousands of years. And here, after all the collapse and all the rebirth, we arrive at the part that matters most, the part that is really what this whole question was secretly about. Because in the middle of all that chaos, the booming forests and the crashing pigeon flocks and the rewilding cities, there would be one group of animals doing none of it. Not running wild, not reclaiming anything, not flourishing, and not even fighting to survive, just waiting. The animals we spent thousands of years teaching to love us would, in our absence, become something the world has never seen before. The largest population of grieving, loyal, waiting creatures in the history of the planet. The dog that sits by the door day after day, long past hunger, refusing to accept that you are not coming back, because in its entire life you always did. The cat that sleeps on the clothes that still smell like you, guarding a scent that grows fainter every single day. We did not just shape these animals' bodies, we shaped their hearts, and we made ourselves the center of them. So the truest answer to what animals would do if humans vanished is not really about the wolves reclaiming the cities or the fish refilling the seas. It is that we would leave behind us a billion broken hearts, creatures built entirely around a love that suddenly had nowhere to go. And that, more than the silent cities or the crumbling towers, would be the real measure of what we were. Not the things we built, the hearts we became the center of. So what would animals do if humans vanished? Almost everything you can imagine, all at once. The dependent would die and a tough few would turn wild again. The hidden dependents we never think about would starve and crash. And the great wild world, freed at last, would heal and surge and reclaim the planet in a wave of green and teeth and life, until the earth was wilder than any of us have ever known it. But somewhere underneath all of that, in the quiet of an empty house, there would still be a dog at a door and a cat on a windowsill, holding a small and faithful watch for a world that ended without a sound. They would wait far longer than made any sense. They would wait the way they had always waited. And they would never quite understand that the most important thing in their entire universe was simply, suddenly, and forever gone.